publicly available secondary data sets that involve large complex surveys, right? So that's the goal. The goal is simple. How do we, you know, train ourselves individually? Each of us are going to be our own instructors during this 10-day period. But the goal is very simple. By the end of this day, at the end of the 10 days, we all will become experts in analysis of complex survey data sets. And you'll be able to write a report like this in a breeze. So this is the report that yesterday I took out time to write almost an identical clone of a report like this. So this is the exact same report. If we were submitting this to the MMWR, this is what would be submitted. So this is version 1.0 of a report that ends up being like this, right? But this is exactly how it is done. So I yesterday took the time to write this report. I've already shared this with you. This is supposed to be a guide to let you know that this is the destination. So this is where we want to end, right? And so as we're going through the 10 days, we're going to divide that journey into very discrete steps where we tackle different elements of the task, right? So we're going to like break it down so that first of all, we pick up the variables that we need. The variables have already been well defined already. So we're going to say on this day, we'll take some part of a work and divide it. So let's say day one, we're going to record variables that are, just single variables. The way the tasks have been structured is such that each day builds on the previous. So that means that if you miss one day, there's definitely going to be a gap. You won't be able to understand it completely. And like everything in life, you learn by doing. So this is not one thing where you want to say, well, I have read the documentation, so I think I understand how it's working. You have to do it, right? For you to get the value from it. So the goal, like I said, is for you to be able to generate the ability to write a report like this in a day. This shouldn't there's no world where this should take you more than a day because this is just a brief report, less than 1,000 words, and one table and maybe two figures. That's the standard design of an MMWR. We have three tables and of figures and 1,400 words maximum. And so the goal is to get to that point where you can generate something like this in a day, right? So let's see how the tasks were apportioned. Like I said, they're designed such that they build on each other so that you start from the simplest and then progressively would build. So like I said, if you miss one day, you will have broken the whole educational cycle. And the goal is to help you to become proficient for certain roles. We live in an economy now where it's very hard to get jobs. You're not going to get a job by posting a visualization or a graph from ggplot and say, hey, I can create graphs. Nobody needs your services in creating graphs. You should be able to create solutions for more complex problems, right? And so that's the goal of this. How do you build competencies? And for yourself as researchers, it's also important because imagine the world you have open to you if you can analyze complex survey data. Because if there's one thing that is in abundance in the world, it's data. But most of the data sets that are available publicly are large, complex survey data sets. And so the current paradigm is somebody saves money to go and do a survey, a tiny survey, and then they start analyzing that to publish. So imagine the kinds of work you could do if you could gain competency in analyzing complex survey data sets. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of data sets publicly available, which nobody ever publishes from or rarely publishes from. So it automatically expands your world in terms of the kinds of things you can do and the kinds of data sets you can explore from. So these are some of the things that you will stand to gain. And generally, you can also stand the possibility of becoming a survey statistician. A survey statistician should have as minimum two sets of skill sets. One is the design and implementation of surveys. So that means that you can set up surveys and you can analyze surveys. Those are the two things that we ask for when we want to hire somebody who is a survey statistician. So you should know about survey design and implementation, but you must also know about survey analysis of not just some simple random survey, but complex surveys, right? So those are two skill sets that you need. And if you want to work as a consultant in WHO, UNICEF, at CDC, you obviously need skills as a survey statistician. Even if you're not branding yourself as a survey statistician, you need to know everything about survey methodology, which includes, like I said, the design on one hand, but also the analysis on the other hand, right? So that's very important. So those are the reasons that we are doing this. So at the end of the challenge, at the end of the 10 days, we will also issue certificates of proficiency. The certificates are just to say that this individual, based on our assessment, has gained considerable expertise in the analysis of complex survey data sets, as demonstrated by your completion of the tasks during the challenge. So how is it going to work? So we will post each day, we're going to post the material that you need to cover. We've already created this already, so you have something like this. So you're going to get something like this every day. So here, for example, this is the 10-day analysis challenge manual. We're going to post this very soon. So it's going to be dedicated for each day. So day zero, which is tomorrow. Um, yeah, tomorrow is Saturday. Yeah. So the challenge starts tomorrow. So we're going to post this tomorrow, and so you're going to see the tasks for each day. So today is day zero. So you already have access to this information already. If you've registered already, you should have access to the data dictionary, and all of that. All of those are provided in the instructions here. We're going to post this as well again today. And then for day one, which is starting tomorrow, you have specific tasks that you have on each day. So for example, day one says import and inspect data set. So we provide for each day the learning objective for that day. For example, for day one, you should be able to import the data set. You should be able to identify the variable type. The goal is not just for you to click some buttons and get an output. The goal is for you to really understand the essence of the task for that day. So we have tried to provide in very simple language, no complicated language here, some context for why we are doing what we are doing. So it provides guidance for you and instructions for the task that is on hand, and we provide step-by-step instructions for you to complete the task for that day. So all of that will be provided in the manual. We also tell you things that you should watch out for as data integrity checks when you are importing data. So in other words, besides the immediate task, the manual will go into some depth into the peripheral issues that you need to be aware of, not just for this use case, but for generalizable use cases as well. And then there's also some attempt at providing some basic education so that, again, the goal is to provide you with expertise and training in becoming a survey statistician. So at least the analysis component of it, you should know some basic things, which the manual provides. So my encouragement is it's not just about completing a task, right? Take your time to, the same way we have taken our time to create this manual and share it, you should also take your time to be able to review it very carefully so that it's not just, again, it's not just about finishing the task, but really understanding the essence of what we're doing. And that's the whole reason why we've broken down the whole series or cascade into small bites so that you can immerse yourself in the material. And by the end of that day, you really feel you become an expert in that small domain. And then when you build on that incrementally, then that's where expertise comes in. So you have the educational part of each day, and then you have the deliverables for each day. So the deliverables for each day, you have the task that is described very clearly, and you have the work you're supposed to do. So for example, this day one says you should import the data set, and then when you import the data set, you should look at each of these variables that we're going to be analyzing. These are the variables that are in the final report here. So all the variables that have been analyzed in this report, we've extracted them for you. So we've saved you the work of trying to figure out what the variables are. And so we've identified those variables. So your task is now to say, inspect each of those variables and, for example, provide a number of missing values, right? The goal is to force you to engage with the data as you are supposed to when you analyze the data sets yourself. So in most of the tasks, you will find that there is some element of repetition. There's a lot of repetitiveness in each task you've been assigned. And that's deliberate, that's by design. The goal is that after you've repeated the same task many, many times, it gets stuck in your brain, and that's how you remember it forever. So don't just say, oh, well, I have done this one, so I think I've got it. No, just do it over and over and over. That's how you become an expert in anything. So that's a task for this day. So again, like I said, the tasks start from very, very simple. Like day one just says import the data set and create a visualization and assess the number of missing values. Pretty simple. Day two, we now go on to slightly something a bit more challenging. Then day three like that, but it builds on the previous one in each case. Now, we want to do this in a very collaborative and community-driven manner. So what we want you to do is that when you've done the task for each day, yeah, we want you to post it on LinkedIn, right? So for example, here it says complete the third column of the table below, which is this, how many missing values are in each of those variables. And then it says share on LinkedIn screenshots of the completed table as well as screenshots of the visualizations of the top three variables with the most missing value. So in other words, fill in this table and then go to your account on Chi-Squares and give us screenshots of the variables with the most missing value, right? So for example, if this is my, let me go to my challenge, for example. So, you need to again engage with the data sets, and so when it says give us a screenshot, you are at liberty to share anything you want. So if this is the variable, for example, you want to share, you can either share the visualization of it. So for example, you click on the visualize button and take a screenshot of it in whatever chat you want to share. That's one way you could do that with the visualization of the variable. Or you can also share the summary of the variable you're interested in, right? So either you share the visualization of a variable or variables. So you are liberty to choose however you want to share it. You can share a screenshot, you can share a video, but the goal is to build community engagement and to hold ourselves accountable and as a community, right? So that's the whole point of the challenge, is to build that sense of community and to motivate ourselves so that when you see other people doing that, you're also motivated to do it for yourself as well. So that's the whole point behind that. So that's as far as the submission goes. If you have any question on any aspect of the work during the challenge, you can tag at Chi-Squares, our account on LinkedIn, and post your questions. And we also on our end, we're going to be very committed to responding to your questions in real time. And the reason why I want you to share your questions in public is because this is a community challenge, and some other people might also benefit from the very questions that you are asking as well. So now let's look at the step-by-step of the challenge and how it's supposed to go. So day one, we are going to just import data sets and read the data sets. The key things we want to do is identify key variables of interest, which we have done. Your job will be to explore those variables, explore the summary statistics of the variables, explore number of missing values, explore the type of variable it is, whether it's continuous or discrete or categorical or string or whatever type it is, and document that accordingly, right? Day two, we'll now move on to something slightly harder, which is recoding variables. But again, it's slightly simple because we're looking at recoding of only single variables. So how do you take a variable like education with many categories and make it fewer? Again, we'll provide the manual. We'll also provide videos to guide you on every single part of the way. So day two is concerned with single variables. How do you do that? Day three, we'll now move on to something slightly harder, which is now you're not just dealing with one variable now, you're dealing with two or more variables. So you can see how it's increasingly becoming more a bit more complex. Not hard, but just a bit more in-depth or more robust. So day one, just import the data sets and tell us what you see. Day two, take a single variable and collapse it. Day three, take two or more variables and create a new variable from it. Now, as we're doing these things, we are paying very careful attention to standards. Like we have very careful standards for how we do report data in federal or national or global surveillance systems. So you may have experience in the past in, oh, I know how to create a variable. But the more important question is, do you know how to create variables based on traditional or standard benchmarks, right? How do we handle misclassification? How do we handle missing values when we are creating variables? For example, in this report, for example, you have a table here where you have measures like any tobacco product use and any combustible tobacco product use, right? And if you look at the footnotes here, it has things like, um, so let's see, where's the footnotes? Sorry, my eyesight is getting progressively worse. Let's look at um, so this is the icon here. Okay, right here. So any tobacco use was defined as either everyday or some days use of at least one tobacco product. So you use tobacco product 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. The question is, what happens when you have a missing value on one of those products, right? How do we handle such cases as a standard? Obviously, as you can imagine, it makes no sense if everybody implements their own standard. It's like, oh, me, this is how I want to handle missing cases or missing values in such a case. And you decide on your own. No, we don't do that. We have a standard we use, and that standard is dictated by National Center for Health Statistics, right? And we follow the standards by NCHS. So you may have some experience in generating composite variable, but a more important question is the goal of the challenge is to upskill you in how we do these things based on standards, right? Gold standards for the analysis and reporting of complex survey data. The same thing with the representation of things like, estimates that are not precise. So sometimes you analyze data, as you can see here, there are, for this whole of this group, that data are not presented, right? The analyst didn't just wake up and said, oh, you know what, I'm not going to present data for that group. No, there are standards. So it's not just analyzing data and just presenting everything that came out from your output. No, when we analyze data for complex surveys, we review the results very carefully to make sure that what we are reporting meets reporting standards, right? For example, standards for precision. So if you look at the footnote here, that's 4 stars. Based on NCHS is the National Center for Health Statistics. It's a branch of the CDC that based in, Bethesda. So NCHS guidelines provide the framework that we do sampling, that we do analysis of complex survey data, and that we do reporting of data, right? The goal of this 10-day challenge is to really drill into you NCHS standards. Of course, we're not going to dump them all on you one day. We're going to trickle them one day at the other. You would learn to start by the end of day 10, you should be all become experts in NCHS standards for reporting of data. Because like I said, they're not just arbitrary. We don't just wake up, one agency doesn't just wake up and say, hey, this is how I want to report data, or this is how I want to analyze it. No, we all follow a standard in doing so. So here, for example, based on NCHS data presentation standards, estimates were statistically unreliable, right? And that's why they are not displayed, right? So when you come to a job interview, and let's say for an agency, WHO, CDC, UNICEF, and they have large national surveys, and they ask you, do you have proficiency in analyzing survey data? They're not asking you whether you can press buttons and generate an output. No, that's not the question. The question is, are you familiar with global standards for survey reporting? And have you done it in the past, right? Can you do it? It's not that I took a class on it. Have you done this before and can you do it? So that's what the question is all about. So, like I said, the goal is to drill all of these standards into you so that by the end of day 10, yes, you can confidently say, yes, I'm an expert in analysis of complex survey data, and I have done it in the past. And yes, this job you have, I can effortlessly do it in 24 hours. So that's the whole point of the challenge. All right, let's go back to our tracking. So to day 3, again, we will now say we take 2 variables and create a composite variable from it. Again, paying very close attention to managing missing values based on standards, NCHS standards, to avoid misclassification. The crux of everything we do based on the standards is anchored around validity or precision, right? In epidemiology, there's always a trade-off between validity and precision, right? The more you try to go in the direction of one, so as you gain one, you lose the other in general. You can't have both. It's very rare that you have both equally, right? If you want to optimize validity, sometimes you end up with less precision. If you want more precision, you might end up with less validity, right? So the question is, what is the right balance for us to take such that we optimize? Optimize means that we have both at the highest level possible, right? We can have, we wish we could have maximum, like 100% validity.
I mean, I just want to attend that. Okay,
Can we mute ourselves, please? All right, thank you. So that's what we're going to cover on day 3. Day 3 will focus on how to create composite variables in a way that optimizes validity and precision. Again, it's not just mechanically doing things. We're paying very close attention to epidemiologic principles at play. And then day 4, we'll look at how to synthesize new summary variables. So in this analysis, for example, that I did here in this report, you can see in that figure here that, so in this figure, for example, we have average number of cigarette packs smoked in the past 30 days among daily and someday adult cigarette smokers, right? So you can look at here, overall here, we can say, oh, overall the past 30 days, daily smokers smoke on average 21 packs of cigarettes in the past month, while some day smokers or non-daily smokers smoked on average 3.2 packs of cigarettes in the past 30 days, right? Now, to get to this point, you have to create a lot of variables because the survey did not ask how many packs of cigarettes do you smoke or did you smoke in the past 30 days. No, it didn't ask that question at all. It asked a bunch of smaller questions, which is your job to piece together and create a full picture, right? So on day 4, we would be looking at this kind of variable. And the goal is not even about this variable in particular. The goal is to generalize your thinking to say, how do you think about variable creation in general? How do you create a story from data, right? There's always this buzz about, oh, storytelling in data, but what does that even mean, right? Part of storytelling is giving us information in a new way, right? MMWRs have the challenge of not being necessarily novel. You see, in research, we always talk about novelty and significance. So a report like an MMWR, like this one, we publish it every single year as federal agencies. Every single year, we publish this report like clockwork, right? Around November, that's why we call them the GASO MMWR, because it's released around this time of the year. And if you pick some of them, you see that it's the exact same data, exact same methodology. And so when you have that kind of responsibility, it's your job to think a bit and say, well, I want to report on something new, right? I want to say something a bit different. And so while it's the same metrics that we're reporting, I want to say capture something a bit different. So for example, if I look at this report, please can we mute ourselves? Let me look at an earlier report from 2012, for example. Um, so this again, like I said, MMWRs are traditionally the exact same formats, exact same data. But obviously, you want to report something fresh. So here, for example, we have the same prevalence tables, and then we have, let me look for something else, another table, sorry, just a minute. Let me look for something a bit more, um, to emphasize the point I'm trying to make. All right, great. So again, we have a fixed format in general for this report, right? And why is it fixed? Well, it's fixed because everything we report in this official documents has an official reason, right? We have what we call Healthy People 2020, Healthy People targets, where we track national objectives. So the objective says that by 2030, the prevalence of so and so should be so and so. If we were to say that we are moving forward as a country, that's the reason why everything feels like it's a cookie cutter when you are reading reports like this. But even though it feels like it's a cookie cutter, the art of storytelling means that you should be able to think outside the box a little bit, right? So here, for example, let's look at a particular use case. We have this figure, which if you look at MMWRs in the past, you always have this figure, like number of CPD, right? CPD stands for cigarettes per day. So this says percentage of daily smokers aged 18 years or older by number of cigarettes smoked per day, right? So as you can see here, CPD is classified as a categorical variable. But if we were to live up to our self-branded titles as storytellers, your job is to say, this variable on cigarettes per day, how can I analyze it in a different way that is refreshingly new, right? If all the MMWRs in the past have always looked at CPD or number of cigarettes per day among daily smokers, right? And that's the norm. If you look at every MMWR we've almost written in the past, we always look at just daily smokers. But if you are truly a storyteller, your sense of imagination should be really lit. You should be able to say, well, how can I tell a different story? I mean, everybody's tired of hearing the same story. CPD, but among daily smokers. Can I use the data we have to tell a different story, right? And that's why I brought in this. I really wanted to add this part of the analysis in the tasks for the challenge, is to say, well, if we say we are storytellers, then we should live up to that reputation, right? If the first and foremost responsibility of a storyteller is tell us a story, and a story that is new, we're tired of hearing old stories, right? You need to come up with a new story. So here, the question then becomes, as a storyteller, what's your job? How does your skills, which is first of all imagination and curiosity, how does that then align with your expertise in data analysis? So here, if you have a variable, for example, the let's go to the codebook. So please, you will have to use the codebook. The codebook is your Bible or your Quran or your holy book or whatever your book is, right? It is your single source of truth. Right. So same way you are going to be holding your data set in your left-hand side, that's how you want to hold your code book in your right-hand side. You cannot analyze the data without a code book. So it should be the basis for every single thing you do. So here you have, questions on cigarettes. So in this case here, you have a question saying, let's see. Let's look at some of the questions that are relevant. On average, about how many cigarettes do you now smoke a day, right? And this question is asked among adults who are current everyday smokers, right? How many cigarettes do you smoke per day? They provide the answer. Now, when you are recording these variables, you have to watch out for values that are indeterminate answers, that are not valid responses, right? So things like 97, 98, 99, you will have to set them to missing. You're going to see a lot of instructions on that in the manual, the day-to-day manual. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you have this question that is asked among daily smokers. How many cigarettes do you smoke every day? And then when you scroll down, you now see another question here. This is among not daily smokers now. This is among people who smoke on some days, but not every day. The question says, on how many of the past 30 days did you smoke a cigarette? Right. And then if you scroll down further, they ask them, the same people who smoked on some days, on average, when you smoked during the past 30 days, how many cigarettes did you smoke a day? Right. So now we have three questions. One question is asked of daily smokers, which is you say you smoke every day. On average, how many cigarettes do you smoke per day? Now we have two questions that are asked of people who are some day smokers. We ask them, so of the past 30 days, how many days did you smoke? And on the days that you smoked, on average, how many cigarettes did you smoke per day on those days? Right. Three separate questions. Your job as a storyteller is to say, what story can I tell from that data in a way that is interesting? Remember, the whole point of data analysis is to summarize data, right? Data summarization in a way that is insightful. So the question is, how then do you move from those questions to this? This is now saying average number of cigarette packs, right? Smoked in the past 30 days among daily smokers and among some day smokers. So that means that you will have to find a way of capturing those three variables, and instead of having three variables, collapse them into one single variable and then analyze it in a way that is interesting, right? That's going to be the challenge on day number 4. And again, the goal is not just about where's my yeah, the goal is not just about smokers or cigarettes per day. No, no, no. The goal is just to help us think broad and to say, in different circumstances, how can we think of taking different variables that we have and synthesizing new variables in a way that summarizes those separate variables in a manner that is interesting, that is novel, and that is significant, right? So that's what we're going to be doing on day number 4. Now, day number 5, that's when we'll now go into the real substance of complex surveys. We will look at weights, PSUs, and strata, and we'll talk about why you must account for those variables. This is the single most important reason why papers are retracted or you have errata issued when they involve complex surveys. Somebody takes a data set like DHS or and Haynes, and they just analyze it based on what they knew, which is maybe they just imported into Excel and did some basic analysis. That analysis is horribly, horribly wrong. First of all, not every software is designed to analyze complex survey data, right? So I don't need to know the analysis you did. If you told me that, oh, you analyze this data in Excel, obviously I know it's wrong. Why? Because Excel does not have the capability to analyze complex survey data, right? So just telling me, or you say, well, I did it in, Power BI. Of course, the analysis is going to be wrong. Why? Because it does not have the capability to analyze complex survey data. So the first and foremost, issue with analysis of complex survey data is, are you using the correct tool? That's the first thing, right? And then secondly, are you doing it the right way? You can be using a tool that has capability for complex survey data, but you'll be doing it wrong. Remember, there are three variables we need to worry about: weight, PSU, strata. This is not a buffet where you can pick and choose which ones you want to worry about. Now, we sometimes call it weighted analysis, right? By this language, it's tempting to imagine that because it's weighted, it's only about weight. So if you look at in my model report here, you see that language all the time. Let's go back to um, here, right here. So here we say all analysis were weighted to account for the complex survey design. So the point I'm trying to make is that the fact that we say they were weighted does not mean that it's only weight we're looking at, right? For your analysis to be valid, you must consider all those three variables that have to do with the complex design, because those three variables are doing very different things. So on day five, we'll dive into some of the theoretical basis for these variables and make sure we explain it in a way that you can understand what they're doing. And then we'll then show you how to be able to account for those variables and generate your estimates. This document here is, we've provided this document as a gold standard for you. So that means that if you're doing your analysis and you're not getting the numbers here, that means you're doing it wrong, right? And so one of the things we're going to be doing on day day five is also to say, now that you know what weight PSU and strata are, we're going to have you do two separate analyses. One, do the analysis without accounting for those variables, and do the analysis with accounting for those variables. Now compare the results yourself so that you can see why a journal will have no choice but retract your paper when you analyze it in a way that makes no sense, that does not account for those variables. Because you're going to get results that are dramatically different, right? That is not acceptable because then it's like, what do we do with these results? They're useless because you have not accounted for the design, right? So we're going to have you on that day do two sets of analysis, one accounting for those complex variables and the other not accounting for them. Also, we're going to show why the analysis has to include all three, not just weight. So we're going to also have you do analysis that incorporate only the weights, but not PSU or strata, and then compare it with analysis that include all three, so that you can see for yourself that one, failure to account for those variables, all three of them, is wrong. That is a horrible analysis, is invalid, right? No matter how meticulous you were, if you fail to account for those variables, it's wrong. Number two, that it's not enough to just account for one. You have to account for all, right? So that's what we want to establish on day five. So day five is meant to give you the grounding in understanding what complex survey analysis are all about, such that when we go to day six, we will now be able to generate overall and stratified prevalence estimates. So day six is all about generating this table, right? So that it says, okay, these are the overall estimates. So overall estimates means this is overall. So what we mean by overall estimates, this line here. And when we say stratified estimates, stratified means among the different demographic variables that we had created. This is why we're creating those variables. On day one, day two, day three, we're going to be creating all these variables and all these variables, these outcome variables. That's what we're going to be focusing on day two and day three, so that we can perform overall and stratified. So you can see how it all fits together. We generate the variables on days two and three, so that on days four and five, we can calculate this table, generate this table. So that's what we're going to be doing on day number six. So we're going to overall prevalence estimate with confidence intervals or standard errors. You will learn how to switch between confidence intervals and standard errors. Sometimes some journals require you to present results with standard errors, or sometimes it's just a way of being um, more frugal in your use of space. Sometimes you might have a report that involves a lot of variables. So for example, here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variables. And you can see the page is already full. But sometimes maybe for commercial reasons or for government reports, like when we're doing Surgeon General's reports, sometimes we have pretty massive tables. If you have massive tables, how do you save on space? Well, you can make the tables smaller. You can say, okay, I'm going to reduce the font size. That's one option. But you can also choose to say, well, instead of presenting the point estimates with confidence intervals, I'm going to present them with standard errors. So instead of having 18.2 today, the standard error will simply be this, right? A single number like this. You see, that takes up way less space than estimates with confidence intervals. And mathematically, these are exactly the same thing, because if I know the standard error, obviously I can calculate the confidence intervals. So I don't need the confidence intervals when I already have standard error. So you should absolutely, as an analyst, be able to calculate estimates with standard errors or confidence intervals or whatever the requirement might be, um, and be able to convert from one to the other. So day six, we will be doing that. We'll see how you can compute with confidence intervals or with standard errors, and how to also generate stratified estimates by sex, race, or other characteristics. Day seven, we will talk about generating and interpreting weighted population counts, right? So if you look at let's go back to the report. This is our gold standard. Um, so if you look at this report here, you see that it says in 2024, 18.8%, which corresponds to 47.67 million US adults, reported using any tobacco product, including 12.6% who used combustible tobacco, that is 31.79 million people, 9.9 who smoked cigarettes, which is 25.19 million people, and so on and so forth. The question is, how in the world are we generating these numbers? This is standard in every surveillance report. So if you look at like every surveillance report, we put those numbers. Why? Because it's easier so here, for example, how do I make the screen bigger? Okay, good. In 2012, an estimated 18.1%, which is 42.1 million of US adults were current cigarette smokers, right? Again, in surveillance reports based on national survey or large complex survey, this is standard. You must be able to generate things like this, right? If you are an analyst working with complex surveys. So the question is, how do we do those, generate those estimates? Now, here's the wrong answer. Oh, well, we take the 18.8% and then we'll go to the US population and multiply the number by the census. That is completely wrong. That is wrong because the sampling frame for your survey does not equal the census. Like in the case of NHIS, which is the survey we're analyzing, the sampling frame is individuals and households in non-institutionalized populations, right? So it excludes individuals who are in institutional settings like homes for the elderly or who are in military barracks, right? It also excludes individuals who are homeless on the streets because the survey is a household-based survey. So when you look at all of those contexts, you can see that the sampling frame for the survey or the inclusion criteria is a much narrower subset than the census. So you can't take an estimate from the survey and go and apply it to the census and say, oh, these are the numbers. That is completely invalid, right? So what we're going to do let's go back to on the 7 is say, okay, how do we generate those numbers? How do we generate weighted population counts? And so you'll be able to generate them and interpret them correctly. Notice that when we report them, we don't provide an exceedingly precise value. We don't say um, 2,956,221. No, 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 no. We round it in a way that shows humility, right? Humility by saying 2.95 million, for example, we acknowledge that those are just estimates, and we can't afford to be overly precise, right? So on day 7, we will also share what the standards are. Like I said, everything is based on standards. So we're going to share what the reporting standards are for NCHS. And all of those things will, like we said earlier, will always be captured in the manual for that day. So every day we'll share the manual for you that says, here is what you should do, here's what you should know, here's how it is done. Now, go and do it yourself and share with us. And if you have questions, then you ask. And that's how you'll get to gain proficiency in these things. All right, going back to our challenge. Then day 8, we're going to talk about suppressing unreliable estimates. We're going to talk about NCHS guidelines for reliability and how to suppress those estimates in an automatic manner. So all the things we're going to be doing, we will make sure you understand the theoretical basis, but you're not going to be doing it by hand. We're going to show you automation to do that seamlessly on the Chisquares platform. So that's what we're going to cover on day 8. And then day 9 is going to look at subgroup analysis. Subgroup analysis is if you want to analyze data among just a subgroup. So, for example, in this report here, um, let me look for a subgroup analysis, for example, and we'll look at for NYT MMWR for, okay, good, youth. So this is another report, surveillance report. Now, if you look at this report here, the estimated prevalence of tobacco use among high school and middle school students. The way the results are presented is such that they are presented for high school students separately and for middle school students separately. One mistake you see analysts make is that they'll say, oh, okay, your analysis is supposed to be, let's say you collected data, national data, but you want to analyze your manuscript is only among, let's say, people who live in rural areas. Now, this poor analyst who is trying to be helpful will say, oh, let me just give you the data set that corresponds to the rural people. And then they drop all the rows that are from the urban and then hand you a data set that is reduced, right? Maybe the original data set was 1,000 people and 500 of those were in rural areas and the other 500 in urban. So this poor analyst, hopefully that is not you, drops the rows, 500 rows that are for the urban and says, here, take, or they do it themselves and then they analyze data set only among that 500 that came from the rural, right? That's what we mean by subgroup analysis. That is horribly, horribly wrong. You just cannot do that with complex survey data, right? When we analyze complex survey data, the rules are completely different from what you've ever learned. So subgroup analysis must be done in a way that respects the complex survey design and that acknowledges that variance must be calculated from everybody. So in a nutshell, we don't drop rows when we're doing complex survey data sets analysis, even if we're doing subgroups, right? There is a very specific way the data has to be analyzed. Again, you're not the one who's going to be doing it manually, but this is why you must use the appropriate tool. Not every, like I said earlier, not every statistical software is designed to handle complex survey data, right? So your first task as an analyst is to make sure that you're using the correct tool, a tool that supports complex survey analysis. That's number one. And then that you do it correctly, right? So those are some of the things that we're going to be emphasizing on that day. So the now we'll just focus purely on subgroup analysis, and we'll have you do the wrong way, and then we'll have you do the right way. And then you're going to compare the results. Oh, this is what happens when I drop subgroup analysis. And this is what happens when I do it the correct way. Then on day 10, we'll look at statistical testing. So, like I said, everything in complex survey is completely different compared to what you know. So if you've never done complex survey analysis, forget about everything you've known. Like you say, oh, this is how we do a chi-square test, or this is how we do a two-sample test with our data set. Like I said, that's different. This is a different, entirely different ball game. So we're going to focus on how we do statistical testing with complex survey data sets. A very common problem you see in research based on complex surveys that the analyst does the main analysis, maybe they compute prevalence estimate with weight, the weight analysis. But when it comes to statistical testing, they actually do not even know that there are completely different tests for weighted data. And so they now resort to what they have known before in doing statistical testing. I cannot emphasize how wrong that is and how invalid your results are, right? The whole work becomes invalid. It's yeah, you cannot put a square peg in a round hole, right? If the analyses are weighted, if the prevalence estimates are weighted, the statistical test must be weighted. They have to work as a pair, right? So that's what we're going to cover here on day 10. So the goal is to, again, keep it pretty simple. The goal on this particular challenge is not to overwhelm you. Um, Hopefully, we'll have subsequent challenges that now take this challenge and take it a bit step further into more complex terrain, right? But for now, the goal is very simple. How are you, if you were go to work at CDC now, and CDC hired you as an epidemiologist or a survey statistician, and they say, "Oh, your first job is to generate. Please take the NHIS and please create a report." Or you want to work as a consultant for WHO, and they say, "Oh, good, we need a report from DHS or from another complex survey." Those are things that any one of us here should be able to do seamlessly and without even batting an eyelid, right? So the goal for this particular challenge is to help us gain expertise in just that brief report. This is just a small report, 1,000 words and one table, two figures, nothing complicated about it. But it gives us a very good scaffold on which to build the core competencies that we need to know, right? So again, this is nothing. Is nothing here is like extraordinary. Like these are standards. As somebody who has supervised a whole bunch of fellows at CDC, when we have ORISE fellows who come in with, a basic MPH, oh, this is what we expect of them. We expect someone who has a master's of public health to be able to execute this thing seamlessly, right? So that's the standard that is expected for analysis of complex of data sets. So that's what we're going to cover over the 10 days. And like we said, the reporting is you have to be really engaged in this to benefit from it from beginning to the end. Try not to skip a day. Try to you can't learn and be shy at the same time, right? For you to learn, you have to really discard any shyness or fear. So it's okay to be wrong. So if you think you're wrong, that's fine. Just go ahead and still engage, right? If you have questions, post them. We'll answer you. But again, the goal is that at the end of the 10 days, you should develop proficiency in those things. We will be posting videos on each day that takes each like a case of what has been done, and we demonstrate it, and then we'll post it on LinkedIn. So most of our communication is going to be on LinkedIn. So if you're stuck, you should watch it out, watch the video. But I will encourage you to struggle by yourself first, right? Struggle by yourself, and that's the best way to learn. You only learn when there is opportunity to make a lot of mistakes, and you do a lot of back and forth and like, geez, how am I supposed to do this, right? And then you do it over and over, and then you learn. And we've also tried to provide a lot of guidance in this document. We've tried to make it as detailed as possible so you follow step by step by step. And we're using the Chisquares platform because it makes analysis super intuitive, right? You don't have to learn how to code before you can analyze complex survey data, right? So the platform fully accounts for all complex designs, and the advantage is that you do not have to write code. So that's the whole idea. Because that's where the problem comes in most of the times. Um, there are people, there are three groups of people in this world. There are those who write code, there are those who think they can write code, and then there are those who don't write code, right? The dangerous group is the one in the middle who think they can write code, especially when it comes to complex surveys, right? I've done enough work in this area I have to say that at least I've seen everything under the sun, So that is why we're using the Chi-Squares platform again, because it removes that complexity out of it, that barrier to entry, and so that you just need to understand the principles and then you can execute accordingly. Now, regarding the data set access, we provided instructions on how to access your data sets and everything. So here, this document here provides an overview of everything that you need and where to find them. For example, if you we're going to use the Chi-Squares platform for analysis. So if you don't have an account, well, you need to create an account. You do not need to have a paid account. If the free account can allow you to do all the things that we're using for this challenge. So to create your account, again, simply go to the Chi-Squares platform and click on login if you've logged in already, or if you don't have an account, click on sign up. You should do these things before the challenge starts tomorrow. So it shouldn't be tomorrow that you're going to say, oh, geez, how do I create an account? How do I validate my account? Right? Again, there has to be some degree of personal accountability if we're going to scale through the 10 days and actually learn. So create your account today if you haven't, so that you can have everything set up. You should be able to import your data set, download the data set. Where's the data set now? Yeah, so the data set is the NHIS dataset for 2024. For those of you who are a bit adventurous, you can try to replicate the report. In the report, I tried to make it just a sufficient level of complexity. So what I did was I analyzed both 2023 datasets and 2024, right? Now, that is for those who feel that who think they want to be adventurous a little bit. Because now this introduces a new layer of complexity a little bit, because you now have to append the data set. You now have to worry about variables that may not have consistent naming in 2023 and 2024, and make sure it's a little bit more activity involved. But again, that is not required at all. I just added that added layer of complexity for those who wanted some extra challenge, right? Who wanted an extra kick in the challenge. But you absolutely don't have to do that, right? The challenge is tailored for just the 2024, and the manual also is just focused on the 2024. But for those who like just a little bit of a kick, you can also add that 2023. But if you have questions, I can answer them. If you have questions, if you want to do 2023 and 2024 combined, and you have questions along the way, please share your questions and tag us and we'll answer. Because that forces you, like I said, to be able to do other things. It forces you to be able to look at, how do I know where the prevalence changed between 2023 and 2024, right? How do I know that the difference between this year and this year was statistically significant, right? And it introduces a bit of more nuance. But like I said, this challenge is not about a nuance at all. This is just for the overachievers. There are always overachievers in every group that you need to provide a bit of more challenge for them. And so if you feel you're an overachiever, please go for it. If you feel you're not, well, just stick with the 2024 analysis. So download the dataset. Like I said, the challenge starts tomorrow. So today you should strive to download the datasets. This is the link here that takes you to the site. When you go to 2024 NHIS, you would see the sample adult interview. You'll see documentation. As an analyst or as a researcher, period, you should live and die by documentation. The same way you are enjoying documentation from others, that's how you should be able to write documentation, right? I am always talking about documentation all the time, because everything starts and ends with documentation, right? So we should be able to use documentation that exists, but we also need to be able to write good documentation when we're doing research, like conducting surveys, right? If you're going to be a survey statistician or a good researcher in analysis of complex survey space, you remember I said you need to be able to design and implement surveys and also analyze them. So on the one hand, design and implement. On the other hand, analyze and report. Well, how are you going to design and implement if you cannot document anything, right? The same way these guys that implemented this documented it for you, that's how you, when you're designing, have to document it for others so that they can know that, oh, I see, this is what this represents, right? So documentation is important. So here we need a code book. This is where we get a code book. Where's my code book again? Right here, right? This code book here comes from here. The summary gives you a summary of the methodology. For example, if you go back to the report and you look at the methods here, it says in 2023, 29,522 adults aged 18 years or older participated. Now you see here, response rate 47%. Where do you think we get that number from? You cannot report a complex survey analysis without reporting the response rate. This is a requirement, right? You must report the response rate. The response rate is not from the code book. You won't see anything like response rates in the code book. There's nothing like that, because the code book is only about the codes for the variables. The response rate comes from the summary of the methodology. So this is where you get the response rates for each year, as well as information on how the survey was implemented, right? That's why you have the different pieces here. Summary gives you about the information about the actual implementation and the response rates and all of those things. The code book gives you the dictionary to interpret what the different codes mean. And then the public use data set gives you the actual data set. So you can download the CSV file, unzip it, and use it, right? You should struggle with it. We have provided you with the um, there is a sorry, I have so many files open here that navigating amongst all of them is um where was this? All right, in the we have provided a Dropbox that has all of those things together in one place. But you should absolutely use that Dropbox only if you should try to get your hands wet, right? Don't take the easy way out. Taking the easy way out is not a good way to learn. So even though we have created a Dropbox that says use this Dropbox if you cannot download it, please try not to use it, you know, or use it as a last option. So you should get your hands wet. Go into here, try and download this file, try and unzip it yourself, save it there, go through the whole process, right? Because when next you're doing it, there won't be anybody who will be putting it for you in a nice little Dropbox. Because the same way we put it in the Dropbox is to do the same process that we're asking of you. So try to go through that process yourself. So this is how you download the data set and then you import it. So I think that covers the challenge. Let me see if there's anything yeah, so why is it called a challenge? It's not a challenge because you're challenging other people, you're challenging yourself, right? I think that's very important to point out. In general, I think the expectation here, or just from my experience, is that when we do trainings like this, and this is based on many, many, years of trainings like this, you find that at the end of the day, you have 10% of those who started stick to the end, right? 10%, sometimes, if it's favorable, you have 20%. So it's a challenge not to another person, but a challenge to yourself, really. That, yeah, come rain, come shine, you're going to finish this, right? So that's why we call it the challenge. Not that you're challenging somebody else, but that you're challenging yourself. And so I think it's very important to just stick it to the end because that's we have to at some point embrace the hard stuff. And this is not even hard really. But by the end of the 10 days, if you stick to the end, you would really understand everything that has to do with complex surveys and the analysis. All right. We'll provide a certificate to those who finish. So we're going to look at your posts on LinkedIn as a marker for your attempting the whole exercise. We can't deal with emails and so we're going to just take it day by day and see your posts as a marker for your engagement. And yeah, I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions from your experiences so far with the challenge or any other part of it that you want to have answered now. So this was just to give you an overview of how everything will play out, and why we're doing it, and things that you might need. But if there are things that you think you need that we haven't answered, please, this is the time you ask now.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that walkthrough. We have one hand raised. Dauda, you can unmute now and ask your question.
Yeah, good evening from my end. First of all, I want to say a very big thank you to Prof for this wonderful opportunity. Hope and pray we may achieve what we are working towards. So my question is for the 10 days duration, are we going to have the daily session on a specific time or it varies?
So we won't have uh, we will post material. The goal is it's not that we'll be having daily meetings like this. The goal is that you're going to struggle with the content yourself, and we will consider having office hours. So maybe we can have an Iliam. I'm just saying this on the cuff now. So please, you can feel free to push back. But we can have office hours that, Ilya and others will serve as teaching assistants, and they will man those office hours. So that means that every day at 12 noon Eastern time, you can just stroll into the link. We're going to share a Zoom link. such that if you are stuck, you know that there's going to be an office hour at this date, at this time. You can ask questions in the past, on that day, or in the future, right? You can ask any questions that you have. But again, the best thing would be for you to really struggle with the content and only ask questions when you have really explored all other options and you cannot figure this out, right? Because that is that would be a much ideal way to learn. Like really exhaust your options and struggle. Because if you come to with questions, if I'm there, I'm going to ask you, so how have you attempted to resolve this by yourself? There has to be clear evidence that you have tried. That's why it's a challenge. You have to challenge yourself really. But yeah, we're going to have office hours daily. Ilya, is that feasible and or reasonable?
Yes, Prof.
Okay,
It's
all right, great.
feasible. We can do it.
All right, good. The teaching assistant has already said yes, it's possible. So please, so we'll have daily office hours.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Nazis, can unmute. Okay, let's move. Joshua.
Yes, good evening from this side. My name is Joshua, and thank you so much for the very clear and well-explained presentation. My question is there going to be a form of grading system or something that could help us track our progress? Like for day one or day two, when we finish a task, how are we going to know, like, if we are on track or if we've done what is expected of for that day and for that task? For instance, before we go and post on LinkedIn, like, have I done the correct thing? Or there is something in the, let's say, the manual or the guide that we need to get what is in there to know that, yes, we're on track, or like there's a grading system, something of that sort.
Okay, that's a very
Thank
good
you.
question. Yeah, great question. So we intentionally did not provide answers in the manual because the goal is to simulate what will happen in a real world. Like if you were to go to CDC and you were asked to generate a report, your report is supposed to be the single source of truth. So you don't have a an answer already generated to look at. So we're trying to simulate that, but then also provide guidance. So what will happen on each day is that we would release at a specific time, maybe maybe 12 noon Eastern time, the answers for that day. So if you're supposed to let's say generate new variables, we will also generate them and show you what the expected counts are supposed to be. We'll also record videos. The videos will be shared so that you can watch through the process. But the emphasis is more on the process really than on the outcome. The video shows you that's why they have a manual there, right? The manual shows you this is how to do this. The video shows you practically this is how it was done. And then you are left to suffer by yourself or struggle by yourself or challenge yourself and say, okay, I'm going to try and figure this out. And then if you've tried and tried and tried and you have a set of answers, we will then release later on in that day the correct answers, right? And then you can compare your work to what has been found. That is also why we have provided this report here. This report is now the ultimate or the single source of truth where you would it doesn't give you the smaller details overall, the small nuances of saying the count and all, but it gives you the overall final answer, right? And so if at the end of the day you calculate your prevalence of any tobacco use among, let's say, females, and it's not this number, then it's, clearly you're wrong. But we'll provide a smaller breakdown for you to say, here is what I'm supposed to get on this date for the count of this variable, and here is what I got. So you can then, go back and try. So for the grading, there's no grading. You're going to grade yourself. The grade you get is that you have the satisfaction of knowing that you can do this now. And then at the end of the whole session, we're going to compile the reports or the manuals plus the answers together in one large report and share. But that will be at the end of the 10 days. And then we're also going to have another class that goes through the whole exercise step by step so that then you have the learning. But I will really encourage you that you should not be shy of, there's no, the whole point of learning is to learn, right? So don't worry about posting answers that are wrong. That's just part of the learning process. So if you've tried and you are stuck, you can ask questions. If you think you've done it very well, you can post. And if when we release the updated answers or the correct answers, you can go back again and try. So it's what we'll encourage is that there should be an iterative process where you repeat over and over. Because again, I cannot emphasize enough how repetition is crucial to learning. You have to do things over and over and over, right? So you try by yourself, then we release the answers, you try again until you get it. Like after 10 days, really, there'll be really nothing that you can't do because you have passed through the fire of repetition over and over. All right, I hope that answers that.
Thank you, Prof. Enoch?
Yes, thank you, Professor, for this training. My question is more of like generally concerning like the career of a data analyst. I see a lot of people advertising their products as you don't need to learn to code to do this. And I wonder, is there a level of analysis where an analyst needs to learn how to code? Is it something that is just a preference nowadays?
Okay, that's a good question. They no one is going to give you a problem, right, in the real world and say, oh, go and write the code. No, the question is go and solve the problem, all right? So solving the problem is quite different from, writing code. You have people who can, write code all day long, but can never, ever solve a problem. So the solution, the goal of code-free tools or no-code tools is to really take out the stressors. Now, in this challenge, for example, we recommend using the Chisquares platform because it's designed to make life easy for you in that regard. Now, if somebody wants to write a code by themselves in R or Python or whichever language, is that bad? No, absolutely not. If that's the route you want to take, oh, absolutely go for it. But if you've done it, if you've written your code, then the answer you get should be exactly what you get from a Chisquares platform, right? The added advantage of a Chisquares platform is that there are like thousands of inbuilt validation to make sure that you do things the right way, right? And also just to make things simpler. So for example, if you want to record, part of a challenge on the 2 is to record a variable. So let's say that I want to record a variable like, let's say a variable like age, or let's say, age, since I have age here. On the Chisquares platform, record will simply be an issue of saying, oh, I have this variable here, and unless I want to split by 50 years old. And so you have 50, and older or less than that, right? On the platform is similar issue of, okay, just click and split, right? It's pretty simple. Now, as the project owner, do I care whether you got this group by writing code, splitting it, or even if you had a magic wand? However you do it, you can do it, right? So what I would really encourage us is to shift our emphasis from tools. Tools are just tools. Tools are meant to be a means to an end, but not the end of themselves. So if you think that the best way for you to solve a problem is to write code, absolutely write code. If you think that, oh, I'm not good at writing code, but I want to gain expertise in complex survey analysis, because there's nothing you are writing with code that you can't execute on the platform. There's literally nothing that you want to do in, for example, what we're doing, analysis of complex surveys, that can't be done on the Chisquares platform, for example. Now, I couldn't care less whichever approach you choose to use. Like, if you want to write code, great. If you want to do it this way, great. If there's any other tool you want to use, great, right? The emphasis should never, and has never been on the tools. The tools are just a way for us to solve the problem. I'm more interested in how have you thought about issues of validity? Have the way you approach the problem shown that you have carefully considered trade-offs between validity and precision, right? How have you addressed misclassification? You see, those are not issues about tools now. They're issues about philosophy in our approach to problems. So that regardless of the tools, we can still come up with the wrong answers if we don't apply principles, right? So, so yeah, the tools, you can use any tool you want, again, because the emphasis is not on the tools, but on the approach. So at the end of the day, whatever tool you use, you should get exactly the same answer here, right? If you can't get it, then that means that the issue might be with your approach or you're using the wrong tool. Of course, we say the tools are not the problem, but in this context, tools are important because not all tools can handle complex surveys. So I think I should clearly preface it with that caveat. As long as you are using a tool that can handle complex surveys, then it shouldn't matter. If you're using a tool that can't handle it, well, then obviously the work is going to be invalid. I don't even need to know what you did. The results are wrong because the tool cannot handle complex surveys. So I hope that suffices.
Thank you, Prof. Aliu, you can unmute now.
Thank you very much. Good evening from Sierra Leone, Aliu Sako. Thank you very much for this opportunity. This is a golden one. I've been yearning to gain such opportunity. I'm just worried about the office hour. I'm one of the MPhil candidates for one of our universities here in Sierra Leone, and we'll be having a symposium starting Monday. Now, this course will be starting tomorrow. If I am in a symposium, say it starts by 9 a.m., how will I be opportune to navigate through this thing? Is it compulsory for somebody to be in person to join in the session before getting the challenge by him or herself? Thank you very much.
Okay, so the office hours are not required. They're not mandatory. Office hours simply means that we have a homework or an assignment, and we just want to provide this resource should you have problems. So office hours are just optional. You can use it if you need to use it, but you absolutely don't have to attend. So all of this challenge, in fact, the preferred way is that you don't even attend anything and you struggle by yourself. That's the preferred way, right? The challenge is already provided. We're going to provide the manual. The manual will provide the specific tasks that you have to do each day, right? So again, the whole goal is that by the end of the 10 days, you should have done all the work required to generate a report like this, which we have broken into small bite-sized pieces. We're going to share that by tomorrow. So we're going to share this manual. Oh, I think I closed that page already. We're going to share that manual with the tasks for each day in one day, so that at that point, your job is to now take each day and then solve the problem and then share it on LinkedIn and put the appropriate tags so that we can review your work. If you have questions, and if you have questions, you can just post them on LinkedIn too. We'll answer them for you. You don't have to attend the office hours. So we are just recognizing that people have different ways of learning. Some people can just take the manual and say, oh, I'm fine, I've got this, right? They don't need any other thing. Some people need to watch a video. So I'm going to share videos too. Some people need to be in a class where somebody will say, all right, let's go over this thing one more time. And that's what we're going to provide the office hours. The office hours will also, I assume, will be video recorded and shared on YouTube as well. So if you can't attend in person, you can always watch the videos later.
Thank you. Ikeme?
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. Yeah, I just have a random question. So, I don't know, is it possible to use another type of data set on this website, as in like maybe something like ecological data set, because I work with ecological data sets. I don't work with, I'm not in the health sector. I just saw the challenge and I was interested and decided to, jump in. So I don't know, is it possible to use other kinds of data sets on the website? That's my question. And can the website also do statistical analysis, such as maybe multivariant analysis? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, yes. So regarding your second question, yes, the platform can do, regression analysis where you can do, different types of regressions, whether it's, logistic or whichever. For the challenge, sure, you can use another data set, but what we're focusing on really here, we couldn't care less about where's the manuscript now? We couldn't care less about tobacco. We have zero interest in tobacco, right? But we need a topic to explore. We need a topic to challenge. That we have to focus on one thing, right? That's why we settled on tobacco, because it has data, it has complexities that we need to worry about. So the goal of a challenge is not about people who are interested in smoking or tobacco use. No, we are focused purely on the methodology. So the methodological aspects of creation of variables and recording of variables and worrying about misclassification bias and precision, those are things that apply regardless of topic. So just to emphasize, we're not looking at this topic because we are so interested in tobacco use. No, we're simply using it as a case study. So yes, you can use another data set to do the challenge. The only challenge is that there will be no way for you to know whether you're doing it correctly or not, because the benchmarks that we have set are based on this particular data set. So the challenge is that you won't be able to evaluate whether your results are accurate or not. So that becomes a problem. But if you feel you can evaluate it independently, great. But the advantage of using one single source of truth is that it becomes easy to then establish it's falsifiable, right? You can tell whether it's right or wrong. But without a benchmark, it becomes very hard for you to tell independently whether your results are correct. But you can use it. That's the point.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think we've exhausted the questions. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending, and I really hope you take advantage of the opportunity and you weather through the 10 days and to the end of the challenge. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day and a great weekend ahead.
Thank you, Prof.
All right, yeah, bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone for joining. So we'll see you at the challenge. See your post on LinkedIn, and probably those that will join the officer will meet at the officer. Thank you very much. No, there's no attendance today. I see someone asking for attendance. There's no attendance today. Thank you.